Welcome to part 2 of the Vermont Tourism Resilience Exchange virtual series. Our focus today will be on how Vermont's attractions have weathered the COVID storm. This is a 3-part series that is made possible with the support of our sponsor, the Vermont Department of Tourism and Marketing. Thank you, Heather Pelham, for your support. My name is Marie Romanelli, and I'm the event planner for the Vermont Tourism Summit, which is scheduled to be held in person December 8 and 9 at the Killington Grand Resort Hotel. We are anticipating having a virtual component to that event. And for more information on the summit, you can visit us online at vttourismsummit.org. Before we get started, I just have a few housekeeping notes to share with you. One is that our panelists will engage in facilitated conversation for the first hour or so of this session. And then at 1 o'clock, we'll open the discussion up to everyone for open networking, questions, and whatever else. And the second housekeeping note I wanted to share with you is that if you are not a panelist or a moderator for this first section of the presentation, please keep your camera off and your microphone muted so that we can focus all of our energy on who's speaking at that time. And then at 1 o'clock, when we open it up to networking, we invite you all then to unmute yourselves, turn your camera on if you choose and want to engage in conversation. With that, I'd like to introduce our moderator, Amy Spear. Amy is the Vice President of Tourism with the Vermont Chamber of Commerce and President of the Vermont Attractions Association. Amy, the floor is yours. Thank you.
Thank you, Marie. So glad to see everybody today. I'll see more faces, I guess, when we're done with the panelists and we open up to Q&A, but I want to thank everyone for spending their lunch break with us. We're looking forward to an engaging conversation. And if I do want to flag, as I'm going through the Q&A with the panelists, if there's something you want to take a little bit of a deeper dive in, feel free to put it into the chat. I'll try to integrate it into the questions, but we have a really great group of attractions experts with us here today. Each one of them brings a wealth of knowledge and has without a doubt shown resiliency and creativity over the last year. Positivity will be a theme of today. So we're going to try to find making lemonade out of lemons, I guess, is what we're going to do. So I'm going to introduce the panelists before we hop on in. I might or might not use some of Josh's jokes as we go through here. But first, I want to introduce John Tunnicliffe. He is the Director of Camelot with King Arthur Baking. Good morning, John, or afternoon. Next, we have Josh Pallas, who is the Sales Manager with the Spirit of Ethan Allen. Next, we have Sam Lacasse, who is the Guest Experience Manager with Ben & Jerry's Waterbury Hospitality Operations. And last but not least, we have Trish Palayo, who is the Marketing and Communications Manager with Montshire Museum of Science. So as you can see, we have a really diverse group of skill sets on the call today or on the webinar today. So with that, I'm going to jump into the panelist questions because that's really who you're here to hear from, not from me. So with that, we'll jump it off with the first thing. So really, looking at the past year or 13 months at this point in time, it's been really challenging to navigate. And I guess the first burning question of the day is, how have each of you been able to find optimism and resiliency in the work that you do? And really, what makes you so passionate about working in a Vermont attraction? We'll hear from John, Josh, Sam, and Trish on this. So John, I'll turn it over to you.
All right, thank you, and great to have everyone here today. Yeah, it's hard to believe it's been over a year at this point. Yeah, I think, at this point in time, I'm just I'm excited about what lays ahead, and in just reflecting on this past year, I think the first thing that comes to mind is just our team at King Arthur Baking. I think everyone here is just on, at our destination, has done such an amazing job in an incredibly challenging year, to go from, the start of the pandemic and just so much uncertainty to, I'll use the word pivoting, may as well get it in there, to pivoting to like a new way of doing business. You know, none of us were line experts, capacity control experts, and just how quickly we sort of, you know, got those skills, reconfigured our kind of retail and cafe space. So I think that's, you know, a big part of this just has to go to the teams here. I think our definitely our Vermont customers just sort of embracing the seriousness of this and you know, rolling with whatever protocols we needed to put in place. So I think there's a big portion of that. You know, we just have this great loyal customer base. And now just thinking about like, what are we managing in this present time? What are we kind of willing to let go of now, like old ways of doing business, and to really create a new future, you know, for how we're going to conduct our business. So we've definitely learned a lot through this. And with that, I'll.
Josh, do you want to provide some of your insights as well? I know you've had a lot of shifts and changes, but you still smile every day, I think. Oh, and you just have to unmute yourself. Oh, Josh, you're still muted.
Now, how's that? Hi, everybody, and happy, beautiful Monday. One of the things that I found really encouraging last year, we still had over 20,000 passengers come on the boat. We did not get any phone calls from the Board of Health asking about contact tracing or anything. That was a huge success. Mike Shea, the owner, worked very hard with all of the people with all the staff, the crew, ensuring safety for everybody. And that was exciting to watch. It was the biggest change for me in sales last year. You know, usually I'm dealing with the large groups, 100, 150 people, things like that. And the biggest pivot was I started taking individual reservations, which was actually a lot of fun because I got a chance to talk to the actual end user. Usually I'm talking to a meeting planner or the person who's in charge. They're not always the end user per se. So that was very exciting. Looking at 2021, we're extremely excited. Best thing is I know what to sell now. We made it through last year. I know what the minimum is going to be, and I know that it can only be going up from there. So I'm excited about it. From what we're hearing on the telephones, from the people that are calling in, the corporate market is starting to shift around a little bit. They're looking forward to trying to get things back to semi-normal. The association market, the same thing. Tour and travel, which we're going to talk about a little bit later, that's also showing signs of encouragement. So I'm happy. It's the partnerships with VAA is extremely important, which we'll also talk about later on. You know, life continues for us all. It's always a beautiful day on the lake, and it is definitely time to cruise again. So come on out and enjoy. That's it.
Thank you, Josh. Sam.
Yeah, back to what John said at the beginning. It's hard to believe that this has almost been an entire year that we've been operating in this whole situation. But I think if I rewind and I look at before the pandemic, we didn't even think we were going to close. In fact, we said, oh, you know what? Let's close. We'll close for 2 weeks and then we'll reopen. Well, turns out we were closed for 2 months at Ben & Jerry's, and we kind of had this challenge of looking at our entire operation and going, well, we're going to have to change a lot of what we did previously because it's not going to work. So we had to kind of reevaluate our entire operation. And in fact, we turned what was challenging into an opportunity. And we looked at this entire closure as a restart and a fresh start for Ben & Jerry's in Waterbury. Because as a hospitality business, I'm sure all of us know on the panel, and even those at home, you don't really close ever. So for us to close for such a long period of time, we got to reevaluate every little detail of our operation. And that was a fun and unique opportunity. And I think our entire team was motivated about that. We were excited. So we went forward with optimism, and we went forward with that positive energy and made a lot of differences to our operation, which in turn we loved and we benefited from. In fact, the entire 2020, we had more wins than losses. And I think it's because of the pandemic that just challenged us to have that conversation. And, as much as I'm tired of the pandemic, I'm thankful for it because we were able to kind of have that fresh start. So, yeah.
Trish, do you want to share your story?
Sure, yes. So like the other panelists here have mentioned, I think that this year has been absolute. I mean, 2020 was crazy, but just like them, it gave us a chance to really look at what we were doing here and figure out a way for us to continue to serve the community under these different circumstances. We have a very dedicated team at the Montshire who really value the work that we do as a science museum. And one of the things that drive our work is the connections that we have with the community. So when we closed last March, we had to really think about how we maintain those ties. So those ties with our visitors, our members, our donors, our community partners, and the schools and educators that we work with. We had to think about what science learning would look like during a pandemic, and had to think about like new ways for us to serve the community that we work with. So we were able to come up with some interesting ways to engage with people through outlets like social media, or developing digital content like videos and downloadables, or hosting online events and strengthening the partnerships that we had. So these were all just great, as you said, turning lemons into lemonade, right? Like looking at this situation and trying to find a way to grow from it. And we're fortunate that there are ways for us to remain connected despite the need for physical distancing. And it's in this connection between science and community that we were able to find optimism and resilience. And to your question about passion, I feel like that is tied in there as well. I think that, as I said, we're driven by those connections that we make with people. And I think particularly after 2020, those connections are even more valuable for all of us now than they were before.
Thank you, Trish. I think you're so right. Just listening to everyone's experience over the last year, while every different attraction is unique and has their own little niche, everyone has a common thread, and resiliency, teamwork, the people that are involved, it's all a part of the passion of working in tourism and hospitality. So this next little piece that I'm going to segue into is for Sam. At the core of operating an attraction is the guest experience. So obviously all the knowns were disrupted in 2020, and many on today's panelists have found creative solutions to surprise and delight guests, that old adage, even in a restrictive operating environment. Can you tell your story a little bit and how you've still been able to surprise and delight at Ben & Jerry's?
Yeah, I think my team is probably tired of me saying guest experience, guest experience, guest experience. It's all we've been talking about the last year. And I think if you're looking at Ben & Jerry's Waterbury in particular, we knew going into this that the guest experiences were going to suffer, right? We don't have a tour. In fact, we still don't have a tour. The inside facility is closed, remains closed. So really all we had was an outside scoop shop. So how are we going to turn that guest experience around into a positive one, especially for folks that have high expectations coming to visit us? So we had to kind of meet those expectations. So one of the things that we did that was super successful was training and rehiring. When we restarted our entire operation, we started fresh, and that meant we upped our standards. So we put forth new trainings, new orientations that allowed us to set those standards for all of our incoming staff. And I think that made a huge difference. So instead of just asking somebody to scoop ice cream behind the line, we were also asking them to be engaging with the guests, because now we had a mask on our face and we had goggles. So that communication barrier was tougher to overcome. So we couldn't just have a staff member sitting on the side, not engaging. We needed them to. So that was an expectation we set forth, and that was clear in all of our trainings. And that's something we're going to maintain. So in addition to training, another way that we kind of upped the guest experience was by having the staff communicate with our guests. So we put several greeters on the property. We called it patio audience control and front of line greeter. So what were positions in the past that you just put up when you were busy were a mandatory requirement now. And it improved the guest experience because every staffer was required to engage with every single party coming into the site. So, you know, checking to make sure they have a mask on, that they knew what the expectations were, that tours weren't open, but hey, come get ice cream. It just kind of provided that friendly, welcoming environment in a weird time. So that was a huge win for us. In fact, we got a lot of reviews, as it sounds like my fellow panelists did, but you know, we got a lot of reviews back that were like, hey, the staff were super friendly, they were informed, they knew what was going on. That was a huge change for us in 2020. We really hadn't seen that before. So ding, ding, this was another win that we had learned from the closure, that greeters are essential and having those staff engage. So that is something even today we continue to do. So like I said, training for sure has upped our standards of what we ask our staff to do when they're on site to provide the guest experience. And then, like I said, having set new positions was another huge win for us. So yeah, like I said, we've had a lot more wins in this than losses, and greeters and training have been a huge part. I'm curious if anybody else has had that too, but yeah.
Yeah, and if anyone on the call that's a participant has had that experience, feel free to share it in the chat. You know, we'd love to see, you know, what those on this call have also experienced, and how maybe you've seen greeters or your guest experience change, because like I said, it's really all about the people. It's the people coming to visit the attraction. It's the people that are working at the attraction. You know, there's certainly a cycle to the tourism and hospitality spectrum, and it's all about a positive experience for sure. So,
and yeah, absolutely, Amy. And I think you bring up that other point too that I forgot. Communication was huge. Having clear communication for the guests and for staff. So yeah, huge wins.
Probably one of the only times where visitors really want to explicitly know what they need to do versus, you know, being in a vacation state of mind. It's knowing the path that they're supposed to walk on versus, you know, the ambiguity of normal leisure travel. So John, I have to say, you broke this with using pivot. So I'm going to use pivot again in this next portion. So I think it's safe to say that everyone's least favorite word is pivot right now. I think everyone cringes a little bit when you say it, but it really is true. Every attraction has had to adjust operations over the last year, has maybe needed to pivot more than once. But as Sam mentioned, not all changes are bad, and there are some changes that maybe are here to stay. John, do you want to kick it off with a few things that you've realized that improve guest experience that are going to be here to stay?
Sure, yeah, and just great to hear all the things that Sam was able to do at Ben & Jerry's. And again, like, I love this exchange because I was making a couple little notes, just some of the words that you were using. I think, you know, a big piece of it was staying through this, like staying with our core, which is, you know, for our customers and our guests, our students, is to, you know, engage, inspire, and then we have this opportunity to educate, you know, all of our customers at whatever level they are, if they're a home baker, a professional baker. And two of the things that really stand out is for our baking school, where we've always been in person, and very like a hands-on, you know, small class size. We had to close that down, you know, because we just couldn't have students, you know, in the room with instructors. We've always wanted to offer virtual classes, so that was a big shift for us, and we did it quickly, which was also really encouraging. And we went from, you know, offering a couple of classes to now where this is a whole new business line for us, and we're able to reach this global audience, which just that alone brings in all kinds of new diversity, new curriculum, and just gives us great exposure for people who are going to travel to Vermont. Like, you know, they know that we have this baking school once we return to in person. So I think that was that certainly was a big win and something that our teams are really excited about offering. And then the other piece was the just online ordering for our cafe. Again, something we've thought about, but we were just pushed to do that. We did, we closed the cafe for a little over 2 months. Knew that we weren't going to have indoor seating when we reopened, and really wanted to find a way that customers could still get all the great things that they love at King Arthur Baking, but order it online, come in, have a really quick experience, still have that, engage and inspire, with whatever contact they had, and get their order and leave. So I think those are two examples of just like having to make quick decisions and things that are going to stay with us as we reopen, continue to reopen.
And John, one thing that you brought up was at the very beginning was line management. Do you want to talk a little bit about your line management that you've implemented?
I think I'm a little bit of an expert now in creating flows. Again, it was just looking at like, how are we going to bring people into our facility safely, keep social distancing in place, clearly communicate, what is going on. So we did add a greeter. That's something that we will continue with going forward. We had, when we had indoor seating, we had restaurant pagers, the little buzzers. So we sort of took that idea and said, okay, now we can roll that out to people in line, so they actually didn't have to stand in line. So we would give them a pager, they could be in our courtyard area, and then we would buzz them when we had space available for them to come into the retail space or the cafe. So that was kind of a, quick, like, okay, we're gonna try this, and it worked pretty well. So yeah, that was something that I'm not sure if we'll continue with that one, but it'll probably be some iteration of that.
Great. Trish, any thoughts on things that you've implemented at Montshire that are here to stay? I know you've done a lot of work on Montshire at home. If you want to talk a little bit about that, but I'll turn it over to you to add some insights as well.
Sure, yeah. So when the museum opened again last July, we wanted to make sure that we could, the visitors could still come to the museum and engage with our exhibits in a meaningful way, but do so also in a safe and healthy way. So we had to make some changes. And that actually meant like really using our outdoor space. The museum is on 110 acres and we've got 5 different trails, and we have an outdoor experience. So we added to that. Our exhibits department developed a new exhibition, which was, it's this whimsical nature-inspired play space that's nestled in the woods next to one of our trails. So that's completely new as of last year, and developed because we wanted to expand and enhance that outdoor experience. And that's something that's going to stay. So that is now like part of like the experience, that's now one of the experiences that we offer outside. And it also meant like using some of our existing space. Like we have this pavilion that's outside that, in before times was really used as a space for people to eat. And then we transformed that into an exhibition space. So last summer we moved our Bubbles exhibit out there so people could continue to enjoy that. That was when the museum was really just outdoor only. And this year Bubbles won't be out there, but we are going to continue using that space as an exhibition space. We established an online registration process. We set up multiple hand sanitizing stations at various areas in the museum. We have continual air exchange through the HVAC system. And our museum store now has an online component. So these are all things that we will continue with moving forward. Outside of the physical space, as you mentioned, we had Montshire at home. So we wanted to develop ways for people to engage with the museum outside the building when they are at home. So we created this this online learning series where we offered instructional videos, downloadable worksheets, and other resources for people to learn about science topics. And from there, we were also able to start offering online workshops, virtual workshops, so people could attend our workshops even if they weren't here in Vermont. And we found that that was a really great way to expand our reach and have people experience the museum and come to our educational programs like out, even if they didn't live in the immediate area. Yeah, and I'm sure, so these are just a few examples of some of the things that some of the changes that we've made. I'm sure a number of them will stay. I think, you know, as we go on, we may discover that there are more changes that we will be making this summer that may stick around.
Just a few things you've done over the last year, right?
Yeah, just a few.
So next I'm going to turn to group travel, and I'm going to go, I guess, to our group expert, really Josh on this, and Sam too, who've really dealt with a lot of group travel over the years. So we typically see hundreds of tour buses throughout the summer and fall. That market was pretty much non-existent in 2020, and it's working to recover in 2021. Josh, do you want to share, and then Sam, a little bit on how, you know, you treated groups in 2020, if there were any that came still, and what you're forecasting into 2021 on the group market?
When we talk about groups specifically, well, it covers a couple of different market segments. For 2020, no, we didn't have any groups. We were able to pull off a couple of small weddings, but as far as any motor coach, family outings, reunions, retirement parties, corporate parties, no, it didn't happen. What we did do, quite a few of them were very kind, and they said, look, we still want to come. We're hoping we're going to do it in 21. So we moved them forward and put them on the books for 21. If they gave us a deposit, we moved that over to 21 also. If people wanted their money back, then we just gave it back to them. We didn't play hardball with any of that. Close communication is key, and it's going to continue to be key for 21. Right now, the beginning of the year, May, June, July, we're going to creep through it. Most of it is family related, either a wedding or a rehearsal dinner, family get together of some kind. That's where we're seeing the biggest push. We do have some tours that have come in and said, yes, we want to come on for the lunch during the day. They're a little bit soft right now, nothing like what we've seen in the past, but at least the interest is there. Going into September and October, whoa. We're hoping that it's going to be a very busy September and October. There's a lot of pre-booking that's on the books. Granted, it's all speculative at this point. And for those of us that have been dealing with tour and travel specifically for many years, we know that even in the best of years, there's always a little bit of fall off on that. The one thing that we have going for us is that our records and our history, we've tracked it over the years very carefully. So we have a really good handle on our tour and travel, particularly in September and October. We know and we can feel really confident which tour operators historically pick up their entire block, which ones will fall off a few, which ones have a tendency to actually increase. So by keeping a close eye on that and myself having the history with it, that's how we're going to see ourselves going through. I'm very happy to say that one of the colleges, I got a call last week, I was on the phone with Champlain College. They're very optimistic about doing cruises in the fall with with the new students coming in, which was very exciting to hear. Norwich Academy also, they've got a big reunion coming up in September. They're very optimistic about it. There's an association, the Fly Fishermen or something like that. Cindy, help me out on that one. They're pretty optimistic about holding an event in August. Pardon me. That's what I'm hearing, though. It's all if they were looking at May, June, even the first part of July. They're leaning more towards September, excuse me, for the end of August, going into September and October.
Yeah, buses for sure. Is my biggest fear moving forward. Large groups, it's definitely the biggest challenge. And if you've ever met Amy Weller who works alongside me at Ben and Jerry's, I mean, we are constantly having conversation about what are we going to do with buses? What are we going to do with these big, large groups? Because I think this whole pandemic has forced us to reevaluate the guest experience, and we no longer want to just push all of these people through the building. We kind of want to look at new ways to control the flow and have better line management, and that's hard to do when you're getting 15, 25 buses a day with 50 people per bus. So that does impact the guest experience. So what can we do? So in 2020, similar to Josh, we did not have groups at all. And thus far in 2021, we continue to communicate with those groups, but are transparent with them, and that we don't see tours opening up anytime soon. So that's going to impact what their expectation is of coming to visit Ben and Jerry's. So we are currently not accepting buses. We have had a few show up, as I'm sure maybe others have maybe experienced. Sports groups in particular have showed up randomly. However, they have been very good at giving us a bit of a heads up. So we have kind of trained our staff to communicate with them when they arrive. We can either do drop off curbside ice cream pickup for them. So if they want to place their order ahead of time, we'll bring it to the bus and they can take it and eat it there. We prefer that because then it's not impacting the other guests on site. But if a bus does show up and they want to stop in, right now we're splitting them up into smaller groups. So groups of 4 to 5, and making sure that they socially distance. So again, they're not impacting the guest experience of everybody else visiting. But that's tough to do. It requires a lot of communication, and sometimes those groups are a little rowdy. So that social distancing starts to diminish. So you got to stay on top of them. But I am nervous about this summer. We continue to hear from groups, are you guys opening? We want to come visit. But I think what's going to change is we are going to allow buses back on site, but we may restrict it. We may restrict how many, I think is the big change. I think in the past, we'd be like, yeah, come on in, and have these massive lists of reservations for each day, especially in the fall. I think we might have to limit how many buses we can take so that it doesn't affect the guest experience for everybody else. And most importantly, so we can control it and we can do so safely. So yeah, coach buses, I think, and big group travel is the big challenge we've got ahead of us.
I would like to come back and add on that, and we're picking up where Sam kind of left off there a little bit. What's really important is for us as on attractions and the hotels is to communicate verbally, and this is stuff that's not going to happen on an email. The tour operators, the people that are planning the events, they want to make money. They want to recoup just like we do. And what I'm hearing from them is that they're willing to be flexible also. So if you can't do what you've always done in the past, what they're looking for is an alternative. It might be a change in their schedule. It might be a change in their timing. It might be splitting up a group and having half the group show up at one time and the other half of the group show up at the other time. And a lot of bus attractions, we're able to split them up also. So the communication that we have collectively together among ourselves, which by the way, Vermont has always been known for. It's a badge that we wear with honor. Whenever I've been to an NTA or an ABA, people have said, oh, you guys in Vermont, you all talk to each other. You're friends with each other. It's not like some of the other places I go where everybody's competing against each other. No, we do work together, and that's our reputation. And it's going to be going through 21 when we finished pivoting and we're starting to get back to normal. The communication among ourselves is going to be critical. One of the things that we did a while ago, we sent out an email blast saying that, are you having trouble connecting with any of your attractions or setting up an itinerary? And I did get a couple of phone calls from people, who said, Josh, I'm having a tough time getting a hold of such and such an attraction or such and such an attraction. And I said, okay, fine. And I reached out to those folks to try to get them together. Bottom line to that is, while we're coming back into it, everybody, please check your emails, see what's going on. Get back to the people. They want to know. The tour operators and the meeting planners, they want to do business with us. They need direction, and they're willing, I think they're willing to be flexible to a degree.
Everyone on a Zoom call.
That's it.
John, did I see? Yeah, you wanted to add something in?
Yeah, I was just going to add something to that. And I have to credit Jim Zavo at Vermont Country Store too, because we certainly had conversations around bus tours. And yeah, I think for our destination, we're going to pause bus tours this fall because we just don't feel like we can manage the crowds effectively and then have buses coming in on top of that. And also just thinking about like rethinking our business, it's not always additive to the customer experience. You know, when we've got a full retail store and then we add another 50 people to that mix. So we're going to pause for this fall, and we've communicated that to most of the bus tour companies that we normally work with, and just really rethink how we want to do that following up. And I think Jim had mentioned something that, you know, they will book some bus tours, but it's really going to be really on their schedule, and a little more off peak. So it really works, again, to maintain that really good customer experience in the store.
So a changing landscape for sure. And, you know, it seems like every attraction will handle things a little bit differently. But, you know, I think as many have said on this call, Vermont is such a small state, but it's almost like we're really a small town because we all talk to one another. And we really are all great resources. So, you know, always, you know, reach out to your friends in the industry, because whether you know them or not, I'm sure they'll be happy to provide an answer or some insights for you. But kind of continuing on the thread of communications, I want to talk about my new favorite acronym, Santa. I know some people might think what I'm thinking about Santa, but it's actually signs are not the answer. So there's been an interesting shift throughout the last year of guests wanting to be told exactly what to do when they're on site at an attraction, which means that there has been an increase in signage, and you know, they want to have a thorough understanding of the landscape, what's expected of them. So I'd love to have first with John and Sam share your story of how signage has been effective to shape guest behavior and then also flow through your attraction.
Sure. I think our big parking lot signs have been effective, you know, just with store hours, our protocols, because the more we could communicate with guests prior to them coming into the facility and meeting with our greeter, we just found that was much more effective, and answered a lot of questions for people. So, you know, clearly stated that masks are required so that, you know, if they didn't want to wear a mask, like, you know, we could kind of head some, but not all of that off. And then I think internally, a lot of the signs just kind of get lost in the mix of everything else that we have going on. So I love that, new to me too, the Santa acronym. And I've certainly used it a few times now, and have gone around selectively pulled signs because I don't think they're effective. And let's see, what was the other part of that? Signage. And then I think going back to Sam's point, just around having some strategically placed staff who can really answer questions and just help direct people, because our facility is a little bit confusing when you walk in, and even more so now where we're directing traffic in from a different pattern than we normally would. So I think just having someone there goes a long way to sort of allaying some of the frustration people might have, because they can actually talk to someone. So I think that's been a big shift, and that will stay with us, you know, moving forward.
Yeah, I have had quite my fair share of experience with signage. I worked for Walt Disney World in the past, and one of my roles was traffic and roadway signage. And the joke is nobody ever reads signs. And even at Ben and Jerry's, nobody reads signs. Like you'll sit in the office and it says tours this way and they go this way. Just, people don't read signs, and signs are not the answer. However, with the pandemic, the guest habits have changed and signs are now the answer, right? So you kind of had to look at signage in a new way, and it was super important for us to get our signage right. So we strategically placed A-frames were a big thing for us, and updated and appealing guest guideline signage on those A-frames, but also on social media. And so having that information available and up to date was also extremely important. And taking in my opinions as a consumer, like when I'm looking at restaurants, I'm looking at their Facebook pages instead of Instagram, because that seems to be more relevant. So just in general, that communication guests are looking for these days. So we were able to look at signage in a new way and put it right in their face, via A-frame signage. We had QR codes that were really important to us this year, posted every other pillar as people were waiting in line, so that they could take their time and it wasn't a rushed guest experience, because they had the menu while they were waiting in line, and they could peruse it at their own pace. But yeah, signage was huge this year, both on site and on social media or on any online platform. And like I said, another huge win that we're going to take with us moving forward. I eventually would like to diminish the amount of A-frames on property. That's definitely not the answer in the long term. But for right now, I have 2 A-frames in the parking lot. Guidelines and tours are not open, and it just sets the expectation before they even walk in. So I think the Santa was one of the best things I had heard a long time, and I love it. Thank you for bringing that to our attention.
I know, and you always get to laugh a little bit when you say it, so adding some positive into the day. I want to ask Trish a little bit about the museum experience and signage and directing people to your outside exhibit spaces. You want to talk a little bit about that?
Sure. Yeah. So signage was definitely like an important part of our communication process. And as Sam mentioned, it was also essential that it was not the only way that we communicated. So things that we had, the messaging we had on our signage was also consistent with messaging that we had on our website, on our registration forms, on emails, on any other forms of communication. And with signage, you want to make sure that like people are still getting that that attraction experience when they arrive there. But we learned something interesting when we were developing signage, because we were when in the beginning, we really wanted to make sure that our signage was consistent with our brand. So we really made an effort to make sure that the signage was in line with the colors that we were using at the museum. And what we found was, as we've noted, people don't read signs, right? They don't always read signs. And some of these things would get lost with all the other material that we had. So we had to actually change our signage and make it really, really clear, what signage was specific to your health and safety and what signage was specific to an exhibition. So that was a really interesting learning process for us, was to think about how visually how all these things look. So at a glance, people knew immediately okay, this is going to be signage that is about that is pandemic related, and this is going to be signage that's about going outside. Well, not going outside, but about an exhibit, right? And in terms of directional signage, we were trying to get creative with that, so it wasn't all just freestanding signs that we had leading to the outside. So we used the floor, for example. We created these we tried to find different ways for people to engage with signage so that they wouldn't miss all these different cues. So You've seen it in a lot of others and in a lot of spaces where you've got markings on the floor that indicate the social distancing, but we would use that as well to direct people to different parts of the museum.
Thank you, Trish. This next question is going to be for all of the panelists. And it's really back to the surprise and delight element, but it's more on the operations side. So what are some things that have surprised you over the last year, whether it was from guest behavior or your staff, or even some wins that you want to share that really made you smile over the last year, and a year where maybe it was a little difficult to do that? So John, we'll start with you, and then after you, we'll go over to Josh to share some wins or some surprises on your operations side.
I think from a team standpoint at King Arthur, just the fact that we've kept everyone healthy. We've maintained this bubble of safety in our across our facilities, really. And I think that's a big win. And then I just think, again, for King Arthur Baking, the way the company has supported like every single employee here. No one's lost the beat of, they had to be home with a child, for remote learning, or they had any sort of anxiety about COVID and coming into work. So the whole landscape really changed there, and just the ability to work from home, I think, has been a big shift. That's certainly a conversation we're having now is, we are able to have more people come back to work, but exactly what that's going to look like. So I think the teams is a big piece of it. And so many of our customers are just really grateful that we've been here, that we were able to reopen the doors. And then one thing that really stands out is our bakery, because they haven't missed a beat throughout this whole thing. And when we were closed, they were baking bread for food pantries, food shelves across the state. And it was some staggering amount of bread. It was like 50 or 60,000 loaves of bread, just that we were just baking. We were keeping our team working, and they were baking, and they were making a difference in the community. So I think that was just a really heartwarming thing that we were able to do.
That's great. And like, even thinking about the work-life balance, I will say one of my favorite things that I've seen during the pandemic has been the baking from home. So seeing families in the kitchen together baking has been really enjoyable to watch.
We've sold a lot of flour as a result.
Josh, do you want to share some surprises on your side from operations?
You said surprises, and it wasn't really surprising. I mean, all of us in the hospitality business, we're used to multitasking, and we're used to doing a variety of jobs. And this past year, that was all put to the test. Our chef was washing dishes sometimes. I myself was taking individual reservations. The owner of the hotel, the owner of the business, Mike Shea, he's always been involved to begin with, but you could see that added involvement. I mean, he was going on the boat and really making sure that the COVID requirements were in place, that not only was our staff following them, but our guests were following them. I mean, he really there were a couple of times when people said, "Oh, I'm not going to wear a mask. I'm not going to wear a mask." And Mike just stood there and said, "Yes, you will wear a mask." And what was surprising was that Mike didn't have to say it too hard, because then there were other guests that were on the boat that they turned around to the person and said, "Yeah, put your mask on." And so there was this self-policing responsibility that was going on. We're very happy that we were able to have over 20,000 people on the boat last year. Granted, normally we do about 85,000, but we did the 20,000, and they all had a wonderful time. So I really was struggling when you said surprises, because I wasn't even surprised that we made it through the year, because I knew we would. I just knew somehow or another we were going to figure out a way to do it. And it started right with the ownership and went right on down to the captain and the crew and everybody. So was that a surprise? No, it was fun to watch and be part of. That's
That's
all.
really great. So more of a delight than a surprise.
Yeah, that's good.
Sam, do you want to
Still
share?
have a job
Yeah,
today.
I think, surprises for us, the first thing I think of is our team. Before the pandemic, we all used to be like siloed in different departments. The pandemic forced us to all work together. We no longer had a tour group. We no longer had a gift shop department. We just all kind of had to come together. And that bonded us as a team. Like, we are one strong unit now, and I am so proud. And I think it's made the working environment so much easier. We all love it. We're like one big family now. We know way too much about each other, but it's made work enjoyable. And I think it does rub off on the guests. But I think more so important, the staff experience was just improved. We like I said, we came together. We're a family now. And I think it forced us to, because we were so close, have tough conversations. Like, this was challenging, no doubt. And it's exhausting, especially when, a lot of us are at the factory. We're having the conversations with guests who don't want to wear masks. We're having that fear of being in the public and, this person just pulled their, it's stressful. So we were forced to have conversations with staff like, hey, about mental health, like, how are you doing? And Ben and Jerry's has had a real strong support of mental health in their scoop shops, and having those conversations was huge. And like I said, it again just bonded us even more. I'm so proud of our team in Waterbury, and again, this was a surprise and delight for sure. And we definitely won instead of lost because of that.
Thank you, Sam. Trish, do you want to add some thoughts in?
Yeah, so like the other organizations, people on staff here had to wear different hats during the pandemic. We learned new skills, and that was a surprising and delightful experience. So our educators suddenly became content creators. They were at home, like, creating videos of themselves doing these science experiments. We had a YouTube channel that just had a few videos there, and now we've really like grown the content that we have there, and we've grown like the number of subscribers because we were able to develop so much content. And I've had the chance to work with different departments more closely, which is fantastic. All the departments coming together to work on these projects. It also means a lot more Zoom meetings than we normally have, but it's also been, as Sam said, like a great bonding experience, right? You're working with people so much more closely now, which means that you can have deeper conversations too about, and people, because of the circumstances, I think, are also just so much more open with each other. And that has been a really wonderful thing for the staff.
Trish, I want to follow up on a point that you made there when you were talking about all the content that was created for Montshire over the last year. And when we were preparing for this, something you said really struck me, where you said, what used to be the nice to haves have become the must haves. And, this really applies to bringing your attraction to more of a global audience and making sure your tactile onset experience can be tactile to a certain extent virtually. So do you want to talk a little bit about your virtual adaptation at Montshire over the last year and all of that content creation?
Sure, yeah. So I mentioned Montshire at Home earlier, in response to an earlier question, and that was really like how it all started. Was last March, we were trying to figure out like what we could do to remain connected with people and to make sure that we were providing resources to the community that they needed, like at that time. And Montshire at Home is a great way for us to kick off that process. So initially, so basically, as I mentioned, we offer instructional videos, activity worksheets, and other resources. And initially we focused on a different theme every week. So 1 week was spent diving into the different aspects of a particular topic, like density or color chemistry or bubbles. And then we developed teacher guides to go with each topic. And in doing so, we were able to provide resources to families and teachers who are now adjusting to a new mode of learning. So parents, for example, who were juggling both remote work and homeschooling, or teachers who were now adjusting to remote learning, had additional resources to help them. And that was a great way for us to really like dive into this virtual learning experience, right? So we learned a lot in how to develop this content, and that has since evolved into offering even more. So we offer online workshops now. We've hosted online events. We have an animals up close experience that we offer to members, where we have our educators introduce one of our animals, and they get to ask, people who attend the event get to ask questions about the animals that we have here at the museum. And so it's been, and we've found that, you know, we've been able to expand our reach through this as well. So these are all things that were not a priority before. We were not developing videos or worksheets. And in doing so, we realized that we were able to provide something more beyond what we could provide here at the museum, something that people could take home with them and continue to learn from. So that has been, so that's certainly something that we will continue to do moving forward. I think it's been a positive experience. Now we're even thinking about, you know, how we can adapt some of these things that we've learned and help teachers develop programs in the classroom using some of the lessons that we developed during this period. So so it's led to a number of great things.
A lot of innovation and resiliency for sure over the last year with that. You know, I can't believe it, but we're getting close to closing out our hour. So I have one last question, or really thought to pose to the panelists. You know, as I mentioned earlier, to me, Vermont really seems like more of a small town community than a large state. We're all very much connected. And you know, putting my Vermont Attractions hat on, our tagline is that we're stronger together. And, you know, this is especially true during a time of crisis. And I'd love each of the panelists to, you know, give some parting remarks on, you know, how peer-to-peer has been so helpful over the last year to make your attraction more resilient, and any other parting thoughts that you would like to add to this. But we'll kick it off with John, and then we'll go to Josh for remarks.
Thanks, Amy. I think the meetings that we've had throughout this with VAA have just been so helpful. There's been just great conversation, great ideas. I think that just doing this, the ability to kind of share these stories and you know, within this framework has just been really helpful. Again, I'm sort of jotting down notes from Sam and Trish and Josh, you know, as this has been going on, because I think there's still a lot of learning to happen. So I think just this group has been great, you know, throughout.
I kind of said everything I wanted to say earlier, but just to reemphasize how important communication is among ourselves and with our customers, with our potential customers. Don't assume that when somebody calls and they're asking for something, don't assume that they're not going to accept what you're offering. Talk to them, because I find that the customers are a lot more flexible than what we think they are. They have been. They always were. It's just that they seem to be a little more flexible now than what they've been in the past. Don't forget that we all are in it together, and that's a key thing. It's the reputation that Vermonters have and that Vermont Attractions has. That's really important, and obviously try to stay as positive as you can throughout all of this, because because it's contagious. If you're in a good mood, then the person next to you is going to be in a good mood. If you're in a crummy mood, then the person next to you is going to be in a crummy mood, blah, 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 blah. So keep smiling, everybody, and thank you for your time.
Sam, I'll let you go next.
Yeah, I think the connections we've had in this whole pandemic is the storytelling and learning from others and just hearing that you're not alone. Because sometimes this whole operation and responding to the pandemic and changing everything, it can feel overwhelming. And there are certainly times that, especially I'm fighting for the guest experience when maybe others might be worried about P&Ls. But what's really nice is to have conversations with folks like John, Josh, and Trish to hear that they are really excited about the guest experience and they have similar thinking, and that we are right on track. And so, like I said, just hearing from others and knowing that you're not alone, having those communications thus far has been really helpful. So thank you to everybody.
Thanks, Sam. Trish, we'll close out the panelist portion with you.
Sure. Yeah. So those partnerships are really important, and that there are so many different types of partnerships that we were able to really work with during this pandemic. So we have the VAA, which has been such a valuable group of organizations to work with. But then in terms of the work that we're doing at the museum, we didn't do that in a bubble. Early in the pandemic, we actually we worked with Echo, Fairbanks, and VINS, and we were in constant contact with each other to talk about how we were managing things during the pandemic, and we continue to be so. And we actually formed a consortium together called For Sciences Vermont. And the purpose was to work together to provide STEM education resources for communities in Vermont. So that's just one example of what you can do, is reach out to organizations who have a common mission as you do, and work together. But then, like, on a larger scale, we also reached out to community partners and we tried to find new ways to work together. So Ava Gallery in Lebanon, New Hampshire, it's an art space, and you wouldn't normally link a science museum with an art space, but we had outdoor space last year and we were able to provide additional learning space for them to host some of their classes. We worked a lot with Dartmouth College and the Hopkins Center for the Arts, and in hosting and Dartmouth Hitchcock and co-hosting virtual programs. So there were lots and lots of partnership opportunities, which we were really, really grateful for. And in the same way that we've tried to be creative about all these different things that we do on site, even trying to be creative about how you partner with people can be a really wonderful thing for an organization. And that's pretty much it. Yeah.
I know. I think it's. I'm so impressed with each one of the panelists and really everyone on the call today, because there has certainly and without a doubt been a lot of resilience around our state over the last year. I am going to open it up because we're past the panelist portion, but we definitely want this conversation to continue, and I'm going to pass it to Marie from Delaney for just a moment if she has any other housekeeping, but ready to keep talking.
Great. I just want to again say thank you to Amy for facilitating this conversation and pulling together all of our panelists, and to each of our panelists as well for sharing your experiences over the last year. And I know you've all said this, but just how important it is to be able to do this, to be able to share what you've all been going through, but also to remind us that we're not alone, that we're not unique in this situation, that every one of us is having our own challenges in some way, and it actually is pretty similar to the challenges that somebody else might be going through in a similar type of business. So we've really been enjoying offering this virtual series to be able to remind you all of that and to provide you with this opportunity. So this, as I mentioned at the beginning, is part 2 of that virtual series that we're pulling together. Part 1 was on attractions, and that recording is posted to the Vermont Tourism website, and that's vtourismsummit.org. This session was being recorded as well and will be posted to that site later today. And then part 3 will likely focus on the food and beverage industry as well as retail. And we're hoping Amy will moderate that one as well. And more to come on that, but it likely will be in about a month or two from now. And we'll send out an email blast once the details are nailed down, and we'll post it on our Facebook page, Vermont Tourism Summit. So with that, I invite you all to turn on your cameras and unmute yourselves if you're interested in engaging in conversation. And if our panelists are available to stick around, we'd love to have you. But this is kind of your opportunity to just chime in, share your experiences, and ask questions too if you have them. So thank you. Anyone? Jump in. Hi, Julie Z.
Maybe
Hi, Marie. How are you?
Hi, doing well.
Good. I miss you guys. I miss seeing everybody in real life. It's nice to see you on camera, though. Josh, I really miss seeing your smile in person.
Ditto that.
The panelists did a really good job. I was so impressed. And Trish, I don't think I know you personally. Sam, I don't know you personally, but really, really great job. And everybody's done such an excellent job of pivoting. I have to say, I'm a huge fan of King Arthur baking. And so, John, if you don't see me in there, your signage is great.
Thank you, Julie.
You did a great job, and your website was really helpful too. So too much baking during this for me.
I look forward to seeing you here.
I actually had a question for Amy. Wondering if there are grants available for expanding outdoor recreational offerings. Have you heard anything like that?
So I guess I'll do my best to speak to what I know, and if something's different, I'll follow up. I know that moving in the legislature right now, which I believe it's on the House side, there's $5 million for VOREC grants. That's a program that usually has $200,000 in it. And I believe what they found, and that is related to outdoor recreation. For those that don't know what VOREC is, it's the Vermont Outdoor Recreation Collaborative. Someone correct me if I missed something there, but they have a grant program that I believe that's gone through 2 cycles, and they've had far more applicants than money available in the past. So in recognition of that, they're trying to get $5 million through for programs like that. I believe the Northeast Kingdom was a program that was awarded in the first year, but generally it's been millions of dollars worth of projects submitted for just a couple $100,000 that's available.
Okay, thanks, Amy.
More to come, I guess, on that.
Yeah. Just didn't know if you had any inside scoop, yeah, which you usually do.
And I have to go back. Can there really be any too much baking at any time? I don't know if there's such.
Yeah, there definitely can be, Amy.
Yeah,
I can now
I
make
would second that.
croissants. And if you knew how much butter went into each croissant, you would be totally grossed out, but at the same time, like so curious that you had to eat it. So.
I remember thinking that the first time I made buttercream frosting. Any other thoughts? I mean, I can pose questions out there if people want some brainstorming, or if you want to share some other partnerships that you've had to give some folks ideas of who else they might be able to reach out to within our network. Surprising or unsurprising partnerships, I suppose.
Well, I was actually kind of interested where Trish mentioned her partnership with VINS and some of the other. We are part of Billings Farm and Museum, Trish, and we also do a Meet the Animal program, although we suspended it during COVID because we really didn't want our animals getting ill. But that didn't mean, you kind of brought up a good point, that doesn't mean we can't do a video or a YouTube channel on meeting the different animals. And we did some on growing crops. And baking from the Heirloom Kitchen, but we suspended that Meet the Animal program, but that's actually a really great idea. And I just shot a note over to the director at Billings Farms. So maybe that's something we can do on our YouTube channel. So thank you.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, we do it on as a Zoom webinar, and it's great because I think you get to have more people really. I mean, Vince does it too, and you get to have more people really learn about the animal and actually have that connection with an educator from your organization. So like having people interact with Rebecca, who is our educator that manages it, has been just another great touch point to have with people. It's a good way to remain connected, especially for people who come to the museum regularly and would normally see Rebecca. Now they get to see her like at the Zoom meeting.
Sam, I have a question for you on the flavor graveyard. I know when we didn't get to that, but we talked about it during our prep meeting and how you're looking at how can you use the flavor graveyard, or if I've mispronounced it, whatever.
No. Yeah, for sure. And I know that's one thing we probably ran out of time and didn't get to talk about, but looking forward into 2021, what are we going to do, right? We don't anticipate opening the inside facility simply because we're not ready. And then we also can't impact the ice cream production because we share a building with them. So we have to be very serious about who we let in to the building. So we're probably going to keep everybody outside again this summer, potentially even this fall. So we're having to reevaluate our outside spaces. And one of those spaces that really lacks attention and could be used for more of a guest experience and bettering the guest experience this summer is the flavor graveyard. So let's bring attraction to that, attention to that area. So one thing we might do is put a tour guide out there this summer. And we've also started a lot of work around virtual tours. So yeah, and I think Trish is doing the same or has done the same. She said looking at her outside spaces, that is 100% accurate with what we're doing at Ben & Jerry's this summer, is reevaluating everything we've got outside. And it's not a lot. So we kind of have to be smart about how we're going to use it, because my mindset going into summer this year is controlling the masses, but doing so safely while also providing a better guest experience than what we could in 2020. So that includes bringing attention to the flavor graveyard, or even the 3 cows that come to visit each summer, which are often overlooked. So it's using what you've got for sure. So come visit the flavor graveyard this summer.
I know we have a lot of people still on the call. Since the theme is resiliency, does anyone else have some wins they want to share? Try to be positive as we start the new week ahead. Any wins?
I can add just a little bit. This is Gail from Shelburne Vineyard. And I think one of our wins has been to see how being able to stay with customers by having them use our outside space and seating them with COVID precautions has been really, really helpful. I have to say, just popping back off topic to Sam, that I wonder if coffee ice cream is in your graveyard, because it's one of my favorites that I miss so much. But coming back to to being able to serve people outside, we found that that's been so successful that we're seriously working now on expanding our outside space, building out our patio, which hopefully when we can do it again will help us with larger events and that kind of thing. But it's been extremely helpful to give people the opportunity to talk with the staff who come to serve them, and to learn more about us without having the clutter around our counter that often happens in the old normal.
There was actually also a really great comment added to the chat that says, I'm interested in knowing what tools people are using to support their staff's mental health and helping them to manage anxiety going forward. Does anyone have any response to that?
I did put something in the chat. There is Vermont211.org. It's something that's specifically related to COVID, but it might be a good resource to share out to your staff if you don't have anything available. On the restaurant side, the Vermont Independent Restaurants have partnered with United Way for a Working Bridges program. They're not mental health counselors, but they are counselors, and they provide a number of, conversation and resource around finances, housing, directing you where to go to get assistance. So United Way's Working Bridges program is something that's available. And there's an Invest EAP program that some companies have looked at, and that's something that benefits. And if anyone has any of these programs, please feel free to jump in. I'm just spouting off the resources I know that are available. But Invest EAP is a program for your employees and for those within the same household as your employee. And there's, I believe it's 5 mental health counseling sessions that are available through that. But if anyone has worked with any of those programs or is doing anything, please feel free to chime in.
We've worked with both programs, EAP and Working Bridges, and they're both really good programs. I think Working Bridges is just always feels very attainable for our employees and very accessible because we haven't had them on site at our buildings for the past year, but it's our representative from Working Bridges is a very familiar face across the company, so someone that most employees feel very comfortable reaching out to. And then EAP is also just a really good resource.
At the Lake Maury Resort, we've done the Everyone Eats program. We've been doing that throughout the pandemic, and our owner has tried to get everybody, all of the core staff, he's tried to keep us all employed. And one of the ways he's been doing that is to have everyone help with that program, whether it be food prep or delivering meals, things like that. And it's got kind of a duo benefit because not only does it keep people employed and paid, it also makes you feel really good doing something for the community like that too. And I know everyone here that's been doing it has really had a lot of mental health benefit from it as well.
I think one thing that we've been doing at Ben and Jerry's is dedicated one-on-ones, like just checking in with your staff too, just as a proactive measure. So, having a conversation with your staff every month, dedicated time, and just asking, how are you? How are you doing? Like those simple things have helped as well.
And I know while we're waiting for someone else to chime in, I'm great at filling empty space, maybe to a fault, who knows. So something on Vermont Everyone Eats. I know they're actively looking to see, or envision what the future of that program is. So I guess rest assured for anyone that is interested in that program, that there are active conversations for, how, can that be a sustainable program? How long does it run for? What's the future of it? You've already seen states like New Hampshire that are modeling after Vermont Everyone Eats. So really great stories that have come out of Vermont in a time where it's easy to be negative. So again, back to the theme of resilience.
I just added to follow up to your comment, Amy, about checking in with people. I think that was you that said that. Just check in, say hi, how you doing? Was that you?
That was Sam.
Oh,
Yeah.
Sam, good job, Sam. I just posted a quick link or I am posting a quick link. There's a really good Simon Sinek YouTube video. It's only like 10 or 15 minutes long. And we did it in our leadership training program this week. And it's just about having empathy and checking in with your staff and how much of a difference that makes any time of the year, but especially right now. So just having that extra empathy and going that extra mile, and it makes us happier employees. And then that will show through to all of our guests. So it's a great video if you have 10 or 15 minutes.
I was going to bring up just the connectivity among staff and the team feeling being strengthened through this whole experience. I manage a team that's never together. They work remotely at different historic sites around the state. And so we only ever, or regularly meet. We used to conference call once a month. So now we Zoom every week. And every week I set aside an hour, and every week we talk for 2 hours. And I keep trying to get it down to an hour, but every week we talk for 2 hours. But it's been really great. I actually feel, the team is much stronger. I feel like I don't want to give up. I don't want to give it up. I think we're going to keep meeting weekly via Zoom, or we use Teams, but I am going to try and get it down to an hour because I just don't have that kind of time. But that's been a nice surprise. And I think we'll carry that with us going forward.
Does anybody have some, I guess, COVID-related changes to their attraction that they've implemented that you've decided are here to stay that you want to share with everybody? I know, I think group tours is a big revelation for a lot of attractions, and just curious what other folks are seeing. Have we answered all the questions?
Amy, to your point, I think I can speak for just about everybody. It's just more outdoor, everything you can possibly do outdoors, dining, activities, etc. And I know that we've always had outdoor activities, but our outdoor eating, we had a decent amount, but now we have a lot more. We had a lot more last summer. We're going to continue to add to that outdoor seating, because not only is it COVID friendly, everybody loves to eat outdoors. And I've always wondered why in Vermont, when it's so beautiful out in the summer and we're, if you're not into outdoor sports, you're stuck inside all winter, why more venues and more restaurants don't have more outdoor seating. So that's something we're gonna, I think across the board, everybody's just gonna have more outdoor everything.
I think just to follow up on that, Erin, similarly at King Arthur, we don't plan to have any indoor seating this summer because we just don't feel like we need it just now. And we've got abundant outdoor seating. We're gonna, add more seating, more umbrellas. We'll put up a couple of tents again.
You have a lovely outdoor area. That whole campus is beautiful.
Oh, thank you. And just, I think from my own experience, my wife and I were laughing last week. We've eaten out every single month of the year. So even in January, if there was opportunity just to, get something to go and sit outside, we have this little pack in our car now that we have blankets and little cushions, and so I think that's been a great upside, and I hope it continues because it is a nice experience.
That was something that I noticed from the lodging session that we offered as well, that one of their things that they were talking about is really leaning into what you already have, right? So identifying those things like, okay, we do have outdoor space, and just doubling down on that effort and, really leaning into it, like I said. So I think that's true for the attractions. It's true for the food and beverage industry. It's anybody that really is related to this tourism sector that really is having to look at, okay, what do we offer? What sets us apart? What opportunities exist? And how can we kind of enhance that a little bit more? So it's nice. It's kind of a common theme throughout all of the parts of this series so far.
I think one of the biggest challenges that I'm having with the outside is weather, however. So if you bring your operation outside and the expectations are for everything outside, when it rains or when let's say there's a severe weather event, you got to shut down. So that's going to start to affect the guest experience. So I'm curious if anybody's has had any experience with that. Like, we've put up a tent, but I don't know if that's enough. Has anybody run into that? Or maybe it's just our space. It's not ideal.
Sometimes tents are enough, sometimes they're not. You know, it's just kind of a combination, honestly. We did quite a number of outdoor weddings, and obviously you can't cancel those. So you just got to go for it. And we went through wind and rain and and last summer with the restrictions too, you can only have so many sides of a tent down, and then it's considered an indoor event. So you really had to get creative. It's like, oh, what kind of a decorative border can we put up that's not a wall, but kind of acts a little bit like one against the wind? And how do we just kind of nail things down to the table, almost literally. Creativity, a lot of creativity. And heaters are also good. And just a good attitude. You just have to hope that people, you know, your grandkids are going to be talking about this someday and they're going to laugh. You're going to laugh about it. You really, really are. You might not be right this minute, but it's going to be a story that's going to make it unique.
Yes.
We like that word, unique.
We had a challenge at one point with an outdoor wedding pre-COVID where everybody was having a wonderful time, and then a really bad thunderstorm came up and it was getting closer and closer to us with lightning, and we had to have everybody come inside, and we were prepared for that. We have space for people to come in, but the bride was not prepared for that, and it was a very challenging thing that led to her not paying her bill for many months. So it's something you really have to make plans for and help people understand. I think what we learned from that was that you need to provide that information ahead of time about what happens with weather when you have an outdoor event.
Mm-hmm. And also, Gail, to that point, I would say what we do is for weddings, especially, we get all of our money up front.
Good
I
idea.
mean, it's terrible to say, but they're not used to planning things, and they're not used to things going badly like maybe a corporation is or something like that. And things do go wrong sometimes that you can't, you know, we can't control the weather, obviously.
No,
But yeah, we do 100% ahead of time.
good advice.
I mean, I know that sounds, you know, maybe a little.
It sounds like the industry standard.
Right,
and
exactly.
We do as well at the Woodstock Inn.
Well, this is great. I think we had planned for about 30 minutes of post-panel kind of open discussion, and we're almost at that time. Is there anything else that anyone on this call wants to contribute, or any questions that you feel like you didn't get answered? Now is kind of that time.
Just a big thank you.
Okay. Great. Well, thanks again to our panelists for sharing your experiences and letting us fire questions away at you, and Amy for all of your hard work pulling this together. And thank you to all of you attending for contributing to the conversation after the panel wrapped up. We appreciate it. Well, thank you so much. And we will post this recording to the website shortly.
Thank you.
Take care.
Thanks. Bye.